At 74, André Rieu's health has finally caught up with him, leaving fans shirtbroken in Mexico City as he had to sell several highly antihypertensors. This abrupt change in his touring schedule has led to his son stepping up to take charge of the vast empire that Rieu has spent decades building. It's hard to comprehend the man who once performed an astonishing 100 shows a year and owned a staggering 80 properties may need to consider retirement, especially since he had always confidently declared he would be performing until he was 140 years old. His last performance in Maastricht, where he first began his journey in music, resonates deeply, feeling like a poignant farewell to both his fans and his remarkable career. Born in 1949 in the quaint town of Maastricht in the Netherlands, Rieu grew up in a household steeped in music yet devoid of warmth. His father, a stern conductor of the Maastricht Symphony Orchestra, prioritized discipline above all else, often overshadowing the affection and support typically expected in a nurturing family environment. This tough upbringing shaped Rieu's relentless work ethic and dedication to music, forging him into the charismatic performer he is today. As the curtain falls on an era, his legacy continues to inspire countless musicians and fans around the world. André was the third of 6 kids, and his family felt more like a strict military camp than a warm home. There wasn't much affection or comfort growing up. His parents, who were strict Roman Catholics, focused solely on rules and keeping things quiet. Friends weren't allowed over, and laughter was pretty rare. André once said, "My parents didn't love me very much," and he really believed it. From a young age, his natural excitement didn't mesh well with his parents' distant attitude. His mom was so obsessed with good grades and music practice that when teachers called him an artist, she didn't like it. Because of this, André felt unseen unless he was doing things perfectly. He spent years in therapy trying to figure out why his child felt so empty, but maybe the emptiness pushed him to change how people see classical music. When he was 5, something unexpected happened. He fell for his violin teacher. She was 18, blonde and beautiful. He could barely focus in lessons because he was so distracted by her, but she inspired him to practice every day. He didn't care about scales or techniques, he just wanted to play like her. He watched her hands, her movements, and how she made music come alive within weeks while others were still struggling. André was already mastering the emotional nuances in music. That's what mattered to him, feeling not perfectionist. He grew older, his relationship with his dad got even tenser. André wasn't interested in playing the serious, rigid classical pieces. He wanted to make music fun and lively. To his dad, that was disrespectful. When André told him he wanted to play waltzers, his dad shot back, "I didn't raise you to play waltzers." That was a tough blow. Things get worse when André introduced his future wife Marjorie to his family. Instead of a warm welcome, his mom told Marjorie to leave and ordered André back to his tidy room like he was still a kid. That was the last straw. He took Marjorie and left, never looking back. From then on, his parents never showed up to any of his performances, even when he was playing in big venues around the world. When his dad passed away in 1992, he never got to see what André had achieved. But amid all that rejection, André was hatching a plan. While playing in his dad's orchestra, he noticed something odd. Most of the musicians didn't seem to care about the music. They were chatting about the weather. Instead, they complained about pay. It was lifeless. But then during the encore, something magical happened. The orchestra would play a Strauss waltz, and suddenly the audience came alive. People smiled, they hummed, the energy changed. That's when André knew this was the kind of music he wanted to play, not to impress critics, but to move people. One day, he played a soft serenade for a dying woman who hadn't opened her eyes in days. But as the music filled the room, she opened at them. In that moment, André understood that true power of music. It wasn't about being perfect, it was about feeling. That's when the idea of starting his own orchestra started to grow. In 1978, at age 29, with his newborn son at home and little money to spare, André started small. He formed the Maastricht Salon Orchestra with just a handful of musicians. They played wherever they held weddings, town halls, border towns near Germany and Belgium. They played old-fashioned waltzes and salon music that most people had forgotten. It wasn't glamorous, they weren't making much money, but André didn't care. He was doing what loved. There was one night during a small performance when he played Franzler's Gold and Silver Waltz. He poured his heart into it and felt something shift. It was like the music spoke back to him that night. He decided this was his future. He didn't care if critics said it was cheesy. He didn't care if the light laughed. He believed classical music could be joyful, and he wasn't going to stop until everyone else saw it too. In 1987, André Rieu found himself at a turning point. He was nearly 40 and had been leading the Maastricht Salon Orchestra for almost 10 years, but something felt off. The excitement was gone, the limits were clear, and the old format just wasn't enough off anymore. He wanted something bigger. He didn't just want to play music, he wanted to create magic, that kind of joy and spectacle people once felt when Johann Strauss himself would play the violin while conducting, moving his whole body with the rhythm, that energy, that fun, that sense of being live. Rieu wanted to bring it back, but it wasn't an easy decision. Starting something new meant taking a massive risk, hiring professional musicians, meandrial money, and he wasn't rich. Every musician he brought in meant more financial pressure on his own shoulders. Bookings were uncertain, and classical music wasn't exactly known for taking risks, yet in his heart he knew he had touched. On January 1st, 1988, his new creation, the Johann Strauss Orchestra, had its first concert. It was small, just 12 musicians and a modest crowd. But something about it felt different. Rieu didn't follow the rules. He didn't dress the orchestra in the usual black-headed and keep the stage quiet and formal. He brought in laughter, folk tunes, dramatic lighting, and theatrical flair. Critics didn't like it. They called it cheap and gimmicky, but the audience, they clapped, they smiled, they got involved. Rieu had found a spark, and he wasn't going to let it go. Then came the moment that changed everything. It was May 1995 during the Champions League final. Vienna Ajax and Bayern Munich were battling it out, and at halftime something unusual happened. Rieu and his orchestra stepped onto the pitch and performed King of Waltz No. 2. The tune had become familiar to Dutch audience because of a TV commercial, but no one expected what came next. The entire stadium, 50,000 football fans, started swaying, humming, and losing themselves in music. It was unlike anything anyone had seen. Cameras broadcast the moment live to 300 million people across Europe. It wasn't just a halftime show, it was a cultural shockwave. In the weeks that followed, Rieu sold to 100,000 CDs. The album Strauss and Company, which had been released the year before, suddenly exploded. It stayed at the top of the charts for 19 weeks straight, becoming the country's best-selling album of the entire decade. People who'd never cared about classical music were now buying his albums, going to his shows, and falling in love with waltz's music. Experts still talk about that football match as the moment André Rieu became more than just a violinist. He became a movement, but not everyone was thrilled. The classical music world hit back hard. They called him a fraud, said he was destroying tradition, and accused him of turning centuries-old music into a circus. In one brutal review, a famous conductor even called his performances musical pornography. The critics hated the colorful dresses, the stage jokes, the simplified arrangements, and the massive assets. Things got even more intense in 2008 when Rieu built a replica of Vienna's Schönbrunn Palace, fountains, ice horses, and all just for a stage backdrop. It cost $34 million, and purists were horrified. Still, Rieu didn't back down. He believed music should belong to everyone, not just experts in concertos. He wanted kids, parents, professors, cleaners, everyone to enjoy the same music that used to be locked away behind stiff traditions, and the truth was hard to ignore. Millions of fans loved him. They packed his concerts, they danced in the aisles, and they bought albums, lots of them. In 1994, Strauss and Company had already made waves, but after that 1995 performance, it went through the roof. In the Netherlands alone, it sold 150,000 copies within months. In Germany, it smashed into the top 5 on the chart, something unheard of for classical music. By the time it peaked, it had sold over 3 million copies worldwide. It outsold some of the biggest names in pop, including Celine Dion and Bon Jovi. In major European markets, even big record stores started giving more shelf space to classical music because of him. Industry insiders called it the Rieu effect. Universal Music reported that his albums made more profit than any other classical artist. He wasn't just making music, he was rewriting the business. All of this came from that one risky decision back in 1987 when he named his group after Johann Strauss. People thought was being arrogant, but over time he proved them wrong. He didn't replace Strauss, he revived him. In the 1980, Strauss's waltzes were fading, hardly anyone was playing them, but by 2010 performances of Strauss's music had increased 16 times over, mostly thanks to Rieu. His orchestra, which started with just 12 musicians, had grown to more than 60, even larger than Strauss's own ensemble. In 1999, to mark the 100th anniversary of Strauss's death, Rieu released a tribute album and spoke of his deep admiration. Even the Austrian government honored him with one of their highest national awards for keeping the country's musical heritage alive. André Rieu didn't just play classical music, he turned it into a global event. In 2008, headed something no one expected from a violinist. He built a giant replica of Vienna's Schönbrunn Palace and took it on tour. We're talking about a full-scale castle that traveled the world with him. It wasn't just a backdrop, it had real fountains, ice rinks, chandeliers, and even horse-drawn carriages from Vienna. It was bigger than anything the Rolling Stones had ever built, and it wasn't just for show. Rieu wanted to bring Vienna's magic to people who could never afford to go there. The logistics were insane. Time he set up, it took 100 workers 6 days to build the stage, but it paid off. Audiences packed stadiums. Across Europe and Australia. In Melbourne alone, 65 people filled the Telstra Dome to watch him perform, breaking the record for the biggest classical concert ever held in Australia. Over 3 shows in that city, nearly 90,000 people showed up. And back home in Europe, he was selling out arenas just as fast. At one point in Australia, his DVDs were dominating the charts, holding 8 out of the top 10 spots. Only Pink and AC or DC managed to sneak in. This wasn't merely a fortune. André Rieu's performances gained such immense popularity that he made it into the top 10 list of the highest grossingers worldwide, sharing the stage with superstars like Madonna and the Police. Quite impressive for someone known as the King of the Waltz. And if that wasn't sufficient, his album and DVD sales brought him over 500 platinum awards, a figure no other classical artist has ever achieved. To celebrate this achievement, Universal Music presented him with a custom chrome violin trophy, stating that his level of success was unprecedented in the music industry. However, not everything was perfect. In 2016, disaster struck during what was meant to be a festive Christmas tour in UK. Rieu's longtime trombonist Ruud Merckx experienced a sudden cardiac arrest in his sleep while the orchestra was in Leeds. He had been part of Rieu's ensemble for more than 20 years. His wife also played in the orchestra, was at his side. They had 2 children waiting at home. The incident hit the group hard. Rieu acted quickly, cancelling the Nottingham show that night and shortly afterward postponing the remainder of UK tour. London, Birmingham, Manchester, Glasgow. Those performances were wiped from the calendar. Rieu referred to his orchestra as family, and he truly meant it. Many members had been with him for over 25 years, and losing one of their own right before Christmas was heartbreaking. Merckx was flown back to the Netherlands, where he passed away 5 days later. When Rieu eventually returned to the UK in March, a shift was evident. The enchantment remained, but the audiences were diminished. People recalled the events of December, and so did he. André Rieu had dedicated decades to captivating the world with his music, but in March 2024, his comeback to Mexico City nearly overwhelmed him. At 74, he continued to tour worldwide with the vitality of someone half his age until his body unexpectedly gave out. After only 2 performances, André collapsed due to a harsh combination of jet lag, high altitude, and a severe flu. The elevated location of Mexico City, over 2,000 m above sea level, pushed him to his limits. Even his orchestra members suffered, experiencing nosebleeds and fatigue. For André, it was more challenging. He felt feverish, dizzy, and stated that, in his own words, he felt a 100 red years old. That evening backstage, called his wife and expressed something he had never said before: "I didn't want a first concert day like this anymore." It was the first time the invincible performer acknowledged they might need to take it easier. The concerts were called off. 40,000 fans were left disappointed, and the man who had always prided himself on never missing a show had to return home. This wasn't simply a momentary alarm. André had been enduring illness for years. In 2010, a viral infection in his inner ear caused him to lose his balance, disrupting his tour and requiring months for recovery. He even performed while suffering from a high fever in 2019 without revealing it. Perhaps thoughtfully, never again. Pierre had become more than a business manager. He was no one keeping his father safe over tires. He had slowly taken the weight off André's shoulders, handling logistics, the crew, and keeping everything running smoothly. André used to want control over every little thing. Now he trusted Pierre completely. The bond between them had grown stronger after every close encounter, every health scare, and behind the scenes Pierre had become the shield. Then came the fine Dutch authorities slapadander with a massive penalty to 3,600, claiming that children had performed past the legal working horse for minors. It was later reduced but still went down as one of the largest cultural fines in Dutch history. André Rieu fought back. They said the children didn't actually perform past PM. They just came back on stage to wave during the curtain call, and technically those kids were under Zanfier's direction. No tenders. It took 2 years of court battles, but in the end the court agreed with him, and when name cathedral went up in flames, he quietly offered 700 tons of steel for its restoration. Quiet gestures that revealed a side of him that didn't always make headlines. Then there's his precious Stradivarius. At one point financial troubles nearly forced him to sell it. He listed it for an absurd price just to keep it safe, and when things got better he took it off the market. That violin isn't just wooden strings, it's part of him. He now plays a rare 173 model and sends it everywhere with security behind all the glamour. His wife Marjorie was always there writing songs for the orchestra without ever taking credit. Her work lives in the music note in the spotlight. While André became faster, Marjorie stayed in the background, shaping the sound, guiding the vision, and pushing him to create something new. When the old world of classical music no longer excited him, she was also the one who pushed for one of the boldest moves the couple ever made, buying a centuries-old castle. The call came out of nowhere. They were on vacation when it happened, and inside you can still hear the echoes of music and the whispers of family decisions that shaped the empire. Now the next generation is stepping into that world. André's granddaughter Daisy is only 9, but she's already rehearsing on the piano with the orchestra. It's not a publicity stunt. This is how the Rieu legacy works, quietly, gradually, through love and talent. André knows what it means to grow up in music. He lived it, and now Daisy is living it too. Just like her father Pierre. If you wanted to sing, clap, or cry, you were in the right place. Be the late 2000s and 20,110 seconds. He wasting audiences not to bother with ball gowns unless they planned to twirl in them. He turned the symphony into a party, and people loved him for it back in the day. Most classical concerts felt more like lectures than live shows. Stiff clothes, quiet crowds, and rules so rigid that even clapping at the wrong time could earn you a nasty glare. Rieu had it that after some critics said his program was too casual, Rieu was already viral. His performance of Danny Boy in Dublin didn't just reach fans, it exploded, billing in millions of views like a cart-topping music video. But his genius wasn't just in going online, it was how he used it. Every stop on the tour featured music, themes, and content tailored specifically to that location. He didn't merely invite fans, he engaged them in the performance. From polls to sneak previews, parties to prizes, each aspect was meticulously planned. It was no longer solely about the music, it became about creating memories, evoking emotions, and allowing the audience to immerse themselves in his vision. Even movie theaters had to change. The days of strict silence and rigid postures were over. Now patrons could enjoy snacks, sip on drinks, and cozy up for an evening that felt more like a celebration than a mere film screening. Rieu recognized a fundamental truth: people desire authentic experiences, and he delivered that. Initially critics were harsh, however. André Rieu has a history that is far more complex than the accolades suggest. Beneath the grand performances and packed venues lies a man who endured years of therapy, striving to overcome the scars left by an emotionally distant father. His father never expressed pride in him, never acknowledged his violin skills, and never truly saw him. The hurt was so profound that André even chose to skip his father's funeral in his youth. He witnessed his brother escape to another country to avoid the same emotional turmoil. Therapy provided André with essential tools and helped him gain a new perspective. He now focuses on tangible investments rather than grand fantasies. That experience transformed him, instilling a sense of caution even if his persona on stage continues to shine. As he nears his 75th birthday, André is preparing for something significant, perhaps one last grand farewell. He intends to return to Maastricht, his birthplace, for a concert series that feels more like a goodbye than a celebration. His health has already issued alarming signals, with show cancellations and worries about how much longer he can continue. He travels with a personal trainer and is meticulous about his sleep to maintain his sharpness. He firmly believes in the healing effects of music. He has heard it from fans, even from medical professionals, who declareth that his concerts are therapeutic. Perhaps that's why he refuses to stop. For André Rieu, every note he plays serves as a means of giving back, a way to stay youthful and an avenue to heal from the pain of his upbringing.